Conversations with Agents of Change, the podcast where we explore how individuals are quietly and sometimes boldly reshaping systems, challenging norms, and creating meaningful change in their communities. I'm your host, Izy Boyd, and today's conversation is about something many of us avoid until we're forced to confront it: money, legacy, and what it really means to plan for the future with clarity, confidence, and care. My guest today is Sharon Galway, who leads the Trust and State Services Division and Protect the Knife. Sharon has over 30 years' experience in financial services, but what makes her stand out is how she works with empathy, plain language, and a deep respect for people's values and lived experiences. Sharon was recognized as an agent of change at her talk Women and Finance Independence during the stage The Change at the Stellar Festival in July 2025, and today you will hear exactly why. Sharon, welcome to Conversations with Agents of Change. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Sharon, I'd love to start with you. You spent over 3 decades in financial services, an industry that can feel intimidating, technical, and sometimes disconnected from real life. Can you take us back and share how you first found your way into this work?
I could actually write a book. It is quite a long story, but I suppose I'll try and condense it down as best possible. Over 10 years ago, I found myself in a personal situation whereby my marriage had broke down. At that time, I was in the insurance industry, working alongside my 2 children, childcare and everything else combined. So that was a difficult time for me. And I suppose I had to make a decision at that time what direction I was going to take. My daughter was in and out of hospital. She had a few health issues. So I kind of made the decision at that time to take a voluntary redundancy and be there for the children. Obviously, looking at other options whereby I could be at home to kind of have the work life balance with the children there. So that was a difficult time going through divorce and the financial strain alone of what that brings in terms of your home and everything else. So for me, it was, I suppose, a time in life where my confidence did drop. I really didn't know what direction I was going to take. I knew I didn't want to continue on in insurance. I couldn't manage that alongside my 2 young children. So I needed to make some decisions in life. I always describe it as a moment where it felt like I was in limbo, not really making any decisions because I didn't actually know what to do. All I knew was insurance and financial services. So that led me down a path of working on myself, really, to rediscover who I actually was, because all I knew was being a mother and working in insurance. That was the height of it. So that's where it took me. And I studied a lot, particularly over COVID. I did many, many courses, really self-help courses to kind of understand the mind, understand how to rebuild that confidence that I once had. And it took a few years to get to the point where I was ready to make some decisions. But that led me then into the world of coaching when I actually got to the point where I started to see a shift in my behaviors and how I felt and viewed about myself. And I suppose the coaching world then led me down a path of helping others. And when I realized how many people out there really do struggle with their mental health, from someone who has been through counselling from the age of 17, I very much knew that there was more to it than just counselling. That really what it all boiled down to was actually number one, you, and you were in control of what you did next. So I went on a mission to educate women and men alike who found themselves maybe midlife wondering, were they in the right place? Were they in the right relationship? Were they just settling for things? Or was there more out there that they wanted to do, and start to inspire people? So I created a Facebook page. I shared a lot of very vulnerable posts and videos about my own personal life to kind of let people see the real story, the real truth. And I suppose encourage people to reach out, because we all put on our face going outside. You close that door after you in the mornings and take a deep breath and put our smile on. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that most people don't know about. And it's okay to be vulnerable and share those behind the scenes stories. And for me, that was, I suppose, helping me dealing with what had happened in my life as well. So it kind of developed from there, and I got into different networks. Obviously, I already had a lot of experience in financial services, but I also recognized that there was an inherent need for women like myself and maybe some men to kind of work through their financial situation as well, because it didn't just come down to what job you choose or feeling better about yourself, because the bills still needed to be paid. I needed to make a new will for my children, my situation. It was just me now. So all those things started to flag up for me. So going down the route of making a new will, I was going through a divorce. I had to get my mum and dad's will changed. There was lots of things at stake. So that led me into obviously the world that I'm in now, which is estate planning and understanding what can be done to protect not only what you've built, but also what your parents have built, and what really you're going to inherit long term, hopefully. And there are many, many people, unfortunately, nowadays who are losing their homes through the care system. They're losing assets through divorce and bankruptcy and credit cards and all the rest. So it's important to know what, firstly, can be done, and that there is other routes that can be taken to make sure that those assets are protected for the long term. And for your children, because let's face it, we all work for a reason. We all want to do better and we all want to earn more and have more experiences. We've only got one life, but we also, many of us have children that we want to leave a legacy, and that's important equally. For me, that's my world. That's why I do everything is for my children, and I want to inspire them and let them see what can be done, and that you just don't have to settle for a 9 to 5. You can actually create what it is that you want, and you can create a life that you're proud of and that you enjoy. And I guess that was priority really for me, but it's led me down this route, and I absolutely love what I do. I love helping people. And in the job that I'm in now, estate planning, I also am able to offer coaching for families who maybe need that support. Maybe they are going through divorce or a difficult situation, or they're due to inherit assets from their parents and they don't want to have those conversations with their parents around what's going on in their life and so forth. So there is a lot of what I have learned in the past through the world of coaching that I've brought into this business as well. So I suppose that's a big learning for me, that coaching and understanding yourself and building that confidence can lead you down many different roads, unexpected roads, but that's really what it's all about.
I'm finding it very inspiring because you managed to see through a very difficult time and you find your path and you find a purpose. And it's not just to help people to get their state planning done right, but also to support them through that and making that human, which I really appreciate. I think many people associate wills and trust and powers and attorneys, and we all associate that mostly with fear or with loss and something that I'll deal with that later. But when I look at your work, it just sounds how human you make it sound. It's like, you know what, let's talk about this, let's plan, let's look after this now. And I just think that you are making that a very complex territory to all the legal terms and just feels slightly less daunting and more personal, which I really think that is empowering. And why do you think state and legacy planning feels so overwhelming for so many people? And what do you do to make it different?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that a lot. And I suppose it comes from being an empath. I'm very open and honest and vulnerable myself. So people do feel more comfortable when they meet me, even though it's a daunting subject for many. They do open up and they do share their vulnerable sides as well. And there are people who are in financial difficulties. There are people who have relationship issues that is difficult to address whenever we're talking about making wills and so forth. I have people who ring me and say, I want you to meet my husband or I want you to meet my wife, but I need to speak to you first because I need to know where I stand if we go through divorce. That's not a conversation that's easy to have with a complete stranger. So you have to be approachable, and thankfully I am, because I have a history. I've been through it. It's not an easy situation or an easy conversation for anybody. And I guess for me, it's all about simplifying the whole process. It's taking it step by step with people to help them say that, yes, there is the legal jargon that goes along with it, but I'm here to help you understand what that is and simplify it. And I suppose it's a hand holding exercise. Yeah, I describe it as I'll put my arms around you and I'll support you throughout the whole process so you can count on me. And they do. Clients ring me morning, afternoon, evening with issues, and I have no bother in taking those calls because I know when people have the initial conversation with me around wills or whatever, there's a lot to take in because it's not just a one size fits all business. You know, everyone's situation is unique. Everyone has stuff going on that maybe they don't communicate with the family, or they're not comfortable in doing so. And for me, it's really important and vital that I know that information. And for them to approach me with that is a big thing. So I have to make them comfortable. I have to let them know that I've got them and we work through a solution. No matter what situation you're in, there's always a solution. And that's the truth, really, above and beyond. There will always be a way around things, no matter how difficult or demanding or excruciating the whole process may seem. It will resolve, and there is a way out of it. I suppose that's a natural thing for me anyway. I've always been a good listener, and the coaching has helped with that. So people do feel open to sharing those more intimate details with me, thankfully, and that's probably why it's a business that's more suited to me than what I initially thought.
I absolutely agree because I think that when you work in a 9 to 5 type of work, you need to kind of align to certain aspects. Whereas when you're by yourself and you're just being you, maybe with another team, but maybe you're the head, that tend to be better for yourself and your professional development. But also you can kind of lead the direction you want your business to go. And something that I found particularly powerful about what you're doing is that you frame legacy. I don't think it's about the documents itself or the assets. It's more about the expression of the values. And I love that you're a qualified coach because then you bring that mindset into your work and into these conversations. And as you said, like hold their hand in a figurative way and maybe in a very literal way sometimes, and help people to find a way to adapt what they need or what they want for their own particular circumstances. And I just find it very powerful. How do purpose and identity show up when people start talking about their legacy? I'm sure that there are different people. There's some people who are more like money based and they just want to protect their assets. And there's people who are like more like, you know what, my family is the most important thing. So suppose personalities and characteristics of each one. Yeah. How did I change the way they see their legacy?
Well, it's not even encouraging them to change how they see it. It's really helping them understand what it is they want to do. Because a lot of people, and I go back to the starting point when I started working myself, the biggest question was, what do you want for you? What do I want for me? Not my children, not my mom and dad. What do you want for you? And a lot of people come to me, they know that they need to do a will, they know that they need to do an enduring power of attorney. They're looking at care fees in the future. They have concerns, but really, do they know what they want to happen? No. When you go in to make a basic will, it is what it says on the tin. It is very basic. Generally speaking, most people leave, if they're married couple, they will leave everything to husband or wife, and then on second death, when the husband or wife passes away, everything goes to the children in equal shares. Now, way back years ago, when there wasn't very much to leave, that wasn't such a massive issue. But these days, people have various assets for consideration. They have lots of different family dynamics as well. There's divorces, there's all sorts of things to factor into that planning. And it's not just as straightforward as a basic planning anymore. So I guess whenever I first meet with people, and I suppose my strength would be reading the room. I had a family there recently, farmers. They wanted to do a wee bit of planning. The father led the farm. He was inherited from his own dad, and he wanted to leave it to his two sons, and he wanted to do it now. But the son, I knew there was something going on whenever he arrived around that table. Now, he didn't say anything to his parents, nor did he say anything to me. But during the conversations, my intuition was telling me that the son had something going on in his life. Now, as it transpired, a couple of days later, he did ring me and he said, "Look, I didn't want to say at the meeting, but we're talking about divorce, my wife and I. So I don't want my father leaving me the inheritance outright." So I guess for many people, it's not about getting them to change, it's about getting them to understand what the implications are when they do certain planning and helping them reach a better kind of outcome for them and for their family. And I said, most people think that their families are great and there's going to be no issues with siblings when they're no longer around. But unfortunately, my experience alone has shown me that that's not the case. And as with all goodwill, people do end up in court contesting wills and they're fighting over who got what jewelry and all the rest. And those are things that can be easily avoided through conversation and communication now, not after you're gone. And it is really important to have those open conversations with your family. And I encourage that. I encourage everyone around the table, mother, father, and children alike, whether they get on or not. I encourage that. And I'm there to help support them through that. And I have had business owners who seem to have it all, the various things going on, and they want to do the planning and they want to create investment companies and all the rest. And a strange story recently was a couple just like that who were building their empire and had succeeded and they were very successful. But actually, by the end of the conversation, they realized that they didn't want the business anymore. They were exhausted and all they wanted to do was retire to a house in the country and travel and all these things. So there's a lot of realizations when these conversations start. So it just doesn't start with, making a will or enduring power of attorney. Many times over, it ends with re-evaluating where they're going in life and why they're doing what they're doing, because a lot of empires that are being built are going to leave a lot of headaches for their loved ones. So there's a lot of realizations as well. So I suppose I'm kind of the person that plants the seed and gets people to revisit things and understand where they're going in life and what they're doing.
That's amazing. I love that. Because it is all about the values, what they actually deeply want for, as you say, themselves first. And then as a result, like for the loved ones, which I think it's something that we are not usually thinking because we think, oh, I'm still young. I'll deal with that whenever I'm such age. And I think it's important to plan it as soon as we can. At Stage to Change, we talked about the women and their financial independence. And I would like to hear your opinion on that. How do you see women when you see your clients, when you see what are they experiencing? Are they somehow less fortunate or those challenges disappearing slowly? Just what's your opinion on that?
Obviously, I deal with women and men, so it just varies. I mean, each client I speak to has their own unique experience of life. And for many women, probably the older generation would really struggle with understanding what's going on in the background financially. Because the man, on many occasions, has taken hold of all of that and takes control of all of that. So I guess for a lot of women, it is kind of understanding where they stand if anything happens to the marriage, or what happens when hubby eventually goes. How am I going to be left? Am I going to be secure? So it is having that security and stability in life, isn't it? And I suppose well, I mean, I've been through it. I had to create my own security and stability, but we all look for that safety net. And I think the really important thing is understanding what you can put in place now and what conversations can be had now to make sure that you do understand where you sit. Because coming from my own married life, my husband was in control of a lot of that, and I kind of took the back seat and was looking after the children, and I thought the finances were being sorted and all the rest, but actually they weren't. And I then found myself in a situation where I didn't know how to do anything really above and beyond going to work and looking after the children. So I hadn't taken control of the finances and I had to relearn a lot of stuff. So I think it is a lot of education goes into this as well. And the conversations that I have with women is really helping them understand where they can go, what they can do, and building their confidence enough so that they can go and make those decisions and say, well, look, if a will is left this way, surely that's not in my best interest. So let's talk about what the options are. Jointly owned property, for example, it's not just as straightforward as if somebody passes away, husband or wife, and maybe the other remarries, they could end up disinheriting their own children. So there is a better way to own a property to ensure that no matter what happens in that regard, your children will still be the beneficiaries, regardless of remarriage or whatever. A lot of people don't know those things. So it's about educating and helping them understand that there are alternatives where you can have the security and stability moving forward. And I suppose the reassurance.
Absolutely. And that just brings me back to what we were saying about lack of confidence when you don't feel like you are strong enough to speak out and say, that doesn't really suit me. So I suppose that is a lot of work that we have to do ourselves. And then obviously plan ahead and say, like, well, okay, yes, I'm a mom, but I'm also a person, and my kids are going to grow old and they are just going to move away. And what's going to happen to me? So I just was wondering, what would you like women that is listening today to feel different about money about after this conversation?
I can only, I suppose, speak from my own experience, but money for me was something that scared me. I lived within my means. I didn't live an extravagant life. I was very careful with the pennies because that's how I was brought up. And many women are, in fairness. And again, when you've got a family, you've got children, they come first. So you take a back seat again there. But for me now, obviously I built a lot of more confidence in that field, and I guess the way to build confidence in any area is to learn more about it and get the facts right. So when you educate yourself in finances and you understand what you can do, what you can invest in, even pensions, and having a safety pot. And don't get me wrong, I don't live by that myself. I do have a safety pot, but I'm very much a big firm believer in experiencing life and not worrying too much because that can stop you in your tracks as well. So there is a healthy balance there, but it is making sure that you have the security, married or not, you have your own independence, and I do encourage that. So it's easy to fall into that role as a mother and a wife, but it is important to maintain that independence and have that separate account to hold a wee safety pot for yourself to build. So it is about understanding. It's not planning for the dreaded future and all the things that could possibly happen and worrying about the future and what if I end up on my own. It's about maintaining that control. That's really what it's about. Control over your finances and your own independence and having your own way in life in case anything does happen. Because life does happen and circumstances change and none of us can predict everything. So it is about putting yourself in a position where you have the education, you know and understand what's out there, and you put those things in place.
And I also think it's a bit of a responsible act to look after yourself. I mean, that is responsible to you as an individual, as your own self, but also with your kids and your dependents, I suppose, because if you look after yourself and you have your own pot money and you can look after yourself when you're an elderly person or when you are sick, that would take a lot of that restraint from your family because you were responsible enough to do that when you could. So I don't know. I just see that as a responsible act in terms of showing as well your children, this is what we need to do. We cannot just expect, well, someone will deal with that. I'll do that myself. And the way to do that is by saying, look, this money is going to go towards my care when I'm old. This house is going to be always mine. And when I die, then that will be a different story, but nobody's going to kick me out of this house until I die. And I think that is very important because I've seen very sad cases in which the adult children are fighting for houses even when the parents are still alive because they feel that they is their right. And I just feel that is very unfair. So I think it's very important to have a very clear conversation, as you said, with your family members and with yourself. Mostly, I think it's not about being selfish, it's about being truth to myself and supportive to myself. So I found it very, very interesting. And I think that as we were saying before, the lack of confidence would prevent that from happening. So the fact that we are having these conversations hopefully will inspire people, not just women, but people in general, to feel that they need to or they can look after themselves. Even, I mean, you don't have to be extremely wealthy to plan things ahead.
Exactly.
Just you just need to give a step around that. Another thing that really, really makes me very interested is how do you see between systems, like people, you're working with solicitors and financial advisors. At the same time, you're working with families. So, from your perspective, what needs to change in how the financial and legal system engage people every day?
Yes, that's a good question. And I guess that's where I come in. And people like me, sort of like an intermediary to a degree. I always kind of describe myself like that. I'm not a solicitor, but I work with solicitors. I'm a estate planner, so I negotiate with solicitors. I obviously work on solutions. I do all of that. But I think the fear factor on many occasions is number one, booking in with a solicitor can be daunting for somebody who really doesn't know anything about what goes into a will or a trust or whatever it may be. And I think it's not knowing the questions to ask. And I think as well as that, then there's the fear of the cost. How much is this going to cost me?
Yeah, that's
So, it's being able to have an honest and frank conversation with somebody like me to say, look, is this going to really sting? Like, can I afford this? Or I can't afford this, and it's been able to, I suppose, be open enough to ask those questions. And it's difficult sometimes for people to go into a solicitor and say, well, I can't afford that. I expected it to be a lot less. I don't want people to be afraid to ask those questions. I want people to approach me and say, well, look, is there a way around this? Can I pay towards this? Or do you
yeah.
suggest I put in place in the meantime until I do save a pot to get the next bit done? There are things that you can do now that are inexpensive, but will give you an element of protection in the meantime. So I suppose that's the encouragement on my part, is to not be put off by the legal stuff, but actually be open enough to have the conversation. Get your facts right. A conversation is free with me. There, you can have a 10-minute conversation, a 20-minute conversation, and get good value, and at least leave knowing what your options are, rather than, pull it off and put it off going to a solicitor. So it is about getting your ducks in a row. And as you say, it's taking ownership of your life, and taking responsibility for those things. And I think the financial world and legal world can be daunting for some people, but actually we're not that bad. And there's a lot of people ready and willing to help. And I've got a great network around me as well that I have built personality wise to match anybody that comes. So you do get the business owners who expect a certain level of communication, and then you get the stay-at-home mothers and husbands and stuff who just want to say, look, here's where we're at. This is where financially we stand. What can you do? Is there any point in us moving forward with any of this? Can we afford it? And there are people out there who I can point those people to get policies, life policies, all sorts of things in place for very, very little, but it will give them more protection, and it'll give them a peace of mind. And I think that's what it all boils down to, is giving people and helping people gain that peace of mind so they can get on with their lives and not have to worry and, oh, the what ifs. We really need to get this done, but we can't afford it, so we'll just have to play it by ear and hope for the best. There's things that can be done that are inexpensive that will bring an element of peace of mind, and I think that's what I'm here to do, and that's my main goal in all of this.
And I love that because that helping or that facilitating of clear communication, it just turning into an act of social change because it's building that bridge where two very complex topics were like between family issues or lack of trust, lack of conversation, shyness maybe, or I don't want to rock the boat too much. I don't want to talk about these. I just keep it quiet. And on the other side, like all the legal terms and the paperwork and all that fear of can I afford it? So you're bringing that bridge. It's like, okay, you will know until you know. So let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like what are your fears in terms of what do you want to inherit, what do you want to leave to whom, And on the other hand, it's like, well, okay, so how much it costs? How, like all this facilitation. To me, that sounds like revolutionary. Like, let's change that. And I just love that. And on this podcast, we talk a lot about change. It doesn't have to be really big. It's not like headline grabbing change, but sometimes it's just a quiet kind that happens through consistency and trust. And when you're reflecting your work, what does it mean to you to be an agent of change, like personally?
I think it's something that needs to happen. I mean, there's lots of help out there, but I know from my own experience being a mother and going through a divorce and really starting from scratch again, there really was very little immediate help for me. And I went through Women's Aid and all the rest. I was on a waiting list. I think I was number 80 down the list, and I got contacted the following year. So, whilst there is help, it's not readily available.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me, and a big realization was there are many people like me in those situations who don't have a support network around them. They don't have family to step in and help out. I was fortunate enough that I did, but even at that, I needed more than just family support. I needed financial advice. I needed legal advice. So I think change insofar as educating people out there, people like me in those situations who don't know where to go, who don't have that support network, it's important to let them know that there is and are people out there who are ready and willing to offer a helping hand and take them by the hand through whatever they need at that time. And it shouldn't be a daunting experience. It should be a very welcoming experience. And certainly from my experience with change and last July, I think it's a great network, and I think it will just blossom the longer it goes on. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing because there's so many people that need that support. Maybe they don't even know they need that support right now. But I think the more it expands and grows, the better it is for the local community. And I think you're adding wonderful value to those people's lives.
Thank you for saying that. And I think that you and I are slightly similar in one respect. And I just want to ask you, your definition of success, has it changed over the years? Because it has changed for me. So I want to hear what you think about it. Has it changed much?
Yes, that's a great question. For me, success is living a happy life. That's it in a nutshell. I do believe success is growth. If you're not growing, and this is something that I heard from Tony Robbins way, way back, if you're not growing, you're dying. And he's absolutely right. And when I compare my life now to where I used to be, I'm not saying I had the most terrible life, but I was on a hamster wheel and I was slowly dying because I wasn't doing something that I was really passionate about. I love my children. They're my world. They're my absolute world. But I also realized that being happy wasn't about having things. It was about experiencing things. And, you know, it's the getting out of your comfort zone situations. It's doing things you don't normally do. It's challenging yourself. I've ran marathons. I have done high roxes. I've done all sorts of different things that I never thought in a million years I would ever do. And I pushed myself out of my comfort zone. And I tell you, I will not go through the next stage of my life without doing that. It took me a long time to get to that point where I built enough confidence and I suppose grit to be able to do that. But once you step over that and into that world, it is a different world. And success for me is about that continuous growth. It's about continuously challenging myself to do better because I know that I can. And again, it's about building that experience and looking back on your life and be able to say, I've lived my life. I have experienced many, many things. I have traveled. I'm just back from New York. Now, New York to me was on my bucket list. You know, that bucket list that everybody puts on. So for me, it was something that years ago I thought I would never say. But I was able to bring my children to New York and standing there and realizing that I did it, me, it was just the best feeling in the world. And my children will remember that for the rest of their days.
Absolutely.
So to me, that's success. It's experiencing life and enjoying every step of the way.
And I can just guess that it was so uplifting and so rewarding because, the Sharon from years ago who was struggling financially or maybe like scared of taking the next step, wouldn't ever imagine to be in that position. Like, you know what? I brought my kids to New York. Why not?
Never.
And I
Never.
think that is so powerful because it just shows you how just one step at a time can take you so far from what you were. And this is only the start. I mean, I believe that what you're doing is fantastic. You're helping so many people. I think that it's something that everyone eventually will have to deal with. So I believe that it's really impressive how far you've come, and I'm really proud of you. And I want the listeners from this podcast to feel that empowerment and to feel that they can too feel that way. So, in terms of that, or if someone listening today is avoiding to estate planning, or it feels that it's not for people like me, what small step do you encourage them to take?
Just get in touch. Just get in touch. Lift the phone, give me a ring. I'm very approachable. We can have a chat. And it really is that. It's just a simple chat. And I'm certainly not a scary person, as you can tell. So, I'm very vulnerable and open on calls. I share a lot about my life with people. I share about my parents' situation because it is personal and it's real stuff. And we've been through it as a family. My mum had Alzheimer's and died last year. So for me, we've been through it all. We've experienced it as a family, the dynamics, the changes of, we've had arguments over mum's care and the stresses and strains of what that brings to normal everyday life. So I do share a lot of that, and I'm not afraid to share that because I think people need to know that they're not on their own. This is real life. This is not just me making money of somebody. This is actually me putting somebody in a position where they stay in control and they don't lose what they're building. And because it is very easy to forget that when you're in the hamster wheel of life and going through every day, going to work, and you have your house, you have your mortgage, and you have your little pot of savings, which is great. But you want to make sure that what you have is left for your children or whoever you intend it to go to, rather than go to the authorities. And I'm not saying you're not responsible for your own care fees, but there are things that can be done to make sure that you're not going to lose everything through that. And I guess it's just, for me, it's encouraging people to just reach out, get the information, educate yourself, understand what you can do, and then at least you can make an informed decision whether or not you choose to do anything with me or a solicitor. You know, get the information and then at least give yourself a little bit of peace of mind to know, okay, I can make a plan towards doing that, and then leave more informed.
Absolutely. I'm going to link your website and your LinkedIn profile underneath the podcast for so people can get in contact with you. I was wondering for those people who are working in finance, in law, or do they have advisory roles? What main mind shift would you love to see across the profession?
I think, oh, it's a difficult one. I suppose from where I used to be now, I'm obviously, it doesn't frighten me at all. I speak to solicitors and barristers and all sorts. So it's a different world for me now. But going back in time, I always felt they were unapproachable. And I think it's all about getting your facts right and understanding what questions to ask. When you go into a solicitor, it can be quite daunting when you don't really know the questions to ask and you don't really understand the processes as such because there's very little information that is told. Now, in terms of a solicitor, they are restricted in terms of what they can do because basically you're employing them to take your instructions. So unless you know what you're asking them, and understand what you're asking them to do, then they can't really support you there. So it is difficult on their part as well. And I guess that's the legal system, whereby me as an intermediary can have those conversations with clients and say, look, you need to be thinking about these things. Not advising them as such, but making some recommendations as to what they could come back with, what questions they could ask to get a more accurate response. So I think the legal world is a tricky one because they are restricted by the law and the law society in terms of what they're able to do. But I think there are a lot of many good solicitors out there who are willing to help. But again, it's knowing what to ask. So that's why I come in. And it's important to get that balance right and help them through that and be the support network there for them.
Then that sounds like it's exactly where you come in, that bridge between the people who need support and the solicitors or the lawyers that they are in that end. But you help building that trust and rapport and understanding and planning and all that. So I think it's amazing. So, Sharon, thank you so much. What stays with me from this conversation is a reminder that planning for the future isn't about fear. It's about care, it's about clarity, it's about choice. And your work is showing me that, will show us that when systems are delivered with empathy, with plain language or easy to understand language, that becomes empowering tools rather than barriers, which I'm loving it. And I think that legacy isn't just that we leave behind, it's more the intentionality of how we live and how to support others when we are here.
Yeah.
So, for our listeners, if today's episode resonated with you, I encourage you to reflect on what legacy means in your own life and who do you trust to navigate that journey. You can find out more about Sharon's work through Protect Tonight, and we'll share the links, as I said before. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, share this episode, and help us to amplify the voices of people creating meaningful change. I'm Izy Boyd, and this has been Conversations with Agents of Change. Until next time, keep asking brave questions and choosing change. This podcast is produced by the Change Impact Group.